Peace, family. Welcome to another episode Underground Railroad Productions. This is your host, Brother Rich. I'm on 125th, joined by
Ayanna. Hey, y'all.
Red Pillar.
Yeah. They back, y'all. They back. We gonna have a great discussion today.
Yeah.
I'm feeling their outfits. I know y'all feeling their outfits. They ain't know each other was gonna dress like that, by the way. But very what do you call that? Afrofuturism? Futuristic?
Yes. Afrofuturism, baby. You know what I'm talking about?
What is the RLEM? Oh, Harlem? Oh, it's supposed to be Harlem?
That's shorthand.
Got the red lamp.
Speaking in code, I'm speaking in code.
Okay.
Hey, listen, y'all. A lot of things going on. Some of the things, yeah. Some of the things we're gonna save for this In Too Deep lecture with Red Pill. Especially what's going on down south right now. That's something that, you know, a lot of things going on with YouTube, where, you know, censorship is being waged and AI and things of that nature. AI, I said no, that's real. AI,
artificial intelligence,
right?
Censorship against hate speech, and now they really singled it out. Right wing, and they haven't come up with a name for the niggas, the blacks. But when they speak about us, they speak in code, in Google code. We're gonna learn about Google Speak or Google Talk. You know what I mean? They speak in code and they say hateful speech, you know, nationalism.
Yeah, but we're gonna save that for the In Too Deep lecture. But I wanna talk today about, you know, and a lot of things are tied together, but this whole Google diversity thing, this memo that went out, that got leaked. And the dude got fired that wrote it. But it reminds me of a lot of things that's going on right now. A lot of people are, Harvard has the most diverse class in the history of Harvard. And a lot of people are upset at that. They feel as though candidates that should be in Harvard is not getting accepted because of these diversity programs.
Yeah.
The dude, the author of this Google memo, we're gonna stick to Google today, James Damore, basically, his basic argument is that Google is being too politically correct. Let me just read this part here.
Okay.
Damore's basic argument is that Google is too politically correct to admit that the heavy male lean of its engineering staff reflects fundamental differences between men and women. In particular, that women are more people-oriented while men are more thing-oriented, and that women are more anxious, less status-obsessed, and more desirous of work-life balance. We need to stop assuming that gender gaps imply sexism. So what I want to talk to you about, if I say women aren't good at driving cars, men are better car drivers, a lot of women would say that sounds sexist.
Yeah.
Some people would say, well, shit, it's the truth. We're built different. There's some things that men could do that women can't do. But in a world where we're blurring the lines between genders, it seems as though whatever you say against the other race can be taken a certain way. Not saying that what he said is wrong or right, but I just see the direction that we're going in, that you have to be real careful with what you're saying. I was always told men aren't good at multitasking. Women are great at If you have a corporation, get a woman, she would manage your whole corporation better than a man ever dreamed he could. Some men will say, hey, wait a minute, that's sexist. Talk to me about this Google memo and tie it into a whole culture of blurring the genders. Do you think that's a good thing? Is it bad for us to continue to say that women are good at this, men are good at this? Or should we just say, you know, both sexes are both good at multitasking, or both good at this or that? Talk to me about this, y'all.
I'm gonna start off.
Okay.
I'm gonna refer to what Richard Spencer, who is the alt-right white supremacist, when he was on, I forgot what show, but I saw it online. He said that they stand for identity politics. It was like the conversation is about identity politics, being able to identify oneself. He said it's too ambiguous. We need to begin to identify ourselves more in a firm way.
Okay.
I bring that up to bring up the fact that in the world that we live in right now, that statement that European made, he's correct in the sense that people are now blurring the lines of identity.
Right.
Okay? So there is no more, you can't say men are better at this or women are better at this when the majority of the men that you may know or the majority of the men that I know and know about are actually acting like women. You understand? A majority of them are actually not, they're actually all the way over there as homosexuals. You have people who basically act women-like. The conversation is like men are acting more feminine these days and women are acting more masculine these days, correct? So then to have an argument to say, well, one gender does something better than the other gender, that the flaw in that is that the genders have now been mixed. Mm-hmm. There's so many people in there's so many people that are in the gender. Peace. There are so many people that are in the gender acting other than that gender, that it would be hard to say that, you know, one gender does something better than the other. The way that I'm seeing it, it's like the genders are becoming one. There's a group that is trying their best to merge both attributes of the woman and the man and just become identified as just a one. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Is that singularity? I mean, you know, is that a form of singularity? Because when they introduce what is known as artificial intelligence, it has no sex. It does everything as one. Mm-hmm. It's not gonna do, it's not the female AI. Yes, it's androgynous. It's of no sex. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? And they speak about that being what people were prior to them being split into the two sexes, the laws of gender. They said that man was androgynous. Mm. But then when we see AI come in and how intelligent it's even showing it to be, and we know that they're about to build up actual androids that look like people because they have the sex bots right now. Mm-hmm. And the sex bots have AI, and the way that they're designing them, they actually are looking closer and closer like real things. So if humans were to become one, or if humans are moving in the direction to express that asexual. The asexual thing, and then we see in technology the rise of the AI and you know that they may have an asexual androids and stuff like that in the future, it makes sense. Mm-hmm. You know, so I'm gonna let you.
Yeah, so I want to speak a little bit more deeply about that diversity memo that came out in Google, and really what Demure was doing with he used empirical scientific evidence. Mm-hmm. And no one's arguing, I think, that there's biological differences when it comes to sex, when it comes to unlikeness or difference between men and women. Mm-hmm. We do have differences. The problem comes when people use, and we've seen this in history, how groups use differences to oppress other groups. So they use points of unlikeness, mm-hmm. points of difference to prove inferiority or to prove superiority, which becomes problematic. Now, if he makes statements like, what did you say, Brother Rich? He made statements like women are less assertive or something like that. Mm-hmm. When it comes to business, women are... He
said women are more people-oriented while men are more thing-oriented, and that women are more anxious, less status-obsessed, and more desirous of work-life balance.
Okay. Now, when you hear differences like this may be true based on social systems and social institutional structures. Yep. So, you know, if you say that women aren't necessarily great drivers, we have to look at the history in certain societies of how long women had the right to drive. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. You know, how long did women actually have access to being able to own automobiles, or being able to be the head of businesses, or being able to be entrepreneurs in certain senses. So when you take these differences like that and you use it as empirical evidence in order to continue oppressing certain groups, then it becomes problematic. I think that men and women, and I don't want to talk about gender, I want to talk about biological differences of the sexes. I think clearly we do have biological differences. I think when it comes to humans in general, when it comes to differences across arenas, whether it comes to gender, race, class, culture, you know, there are differences. Now, how different systems choose to use these differences in order to promote their own purpose and agenda to oppress becomes problematic. And I believe, did he resign or get fired?
Got fired.
Because of his statement? And so we're seeing more of this, right? We're seeing more of this idea of, there's a lot of noise, of companies wanting to create more diversity and inclusion protocols and figuring out what that looks like. I think Uber had a similar situation in which one of their CEOs made a statement when they were dealing with a lot of different issues of sexual harassment. And I think someone petitioned the idea of having more women as directors in Uber. And he made a comment saying something like, well, that will just cause more problems, or, you know, we'll end up being in meetings longer because women like to talk. And he ended up getting fired or having to resign because of that statement. You know, we know historically that in a lot of these spaces, women have not been allowed access, you know. Now that there's more of a push to, and again, this is, a part of this has to do, and we always talk about this, we always have to go back to the concepts of white supremacy, the concepts of white male domination, and how this trickles into all other isms when it comes to sexism, when it comes to classism, when it comes to all these other isms, because it informs how diverse or who's allowed access to what.
Can I just add on?
Yeah.
And I would want to say that we should redefine the term, or reappropriate a better term and call it white inferiority and white fragility.
Got it.
All right?
Yeah.
White fragility. Meaning that if white was superior, they would be in their workplace. Right?
Right.
When you look at labor and when you look at the workplace, with a, you know, it's two different worlds right there. You have a lot of women in labor, like in these sweatshops and other places where the majority of the goods are made for these $1 trillion. And when we're talking about technology, let's get into technology and talk about Apple and talk about Dell and talk about all of these tech giants who utilize sweatshop labor of children, women, and men across seas, and they are transnational corporations, meaning that they're not only American-based corporate entities, they're global, because they have this whole resourcing circle where certain parts are put together, certain things are built together and whatnot. So their labor force is majority of women, but inside of their companies, inside of in the brains of their company, there is a diversity. It is not only a diversity problem of women being employed, it's also a diversity issue of people of different nationalities being employed as well.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So white inferiority is what we're looking at when we want to put the lens on all of these things. What we're seeing in Virginia right now.
Let me ask you.
Hold on. My bad. In the argument that the alt-right and all of these people who have gathered, when you look at their faces in the pictures, you're looking at white fragility and white inferiority. Well, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, when you mentioned Virginia, you know, you're going to touch on that in the Into Deep lecture. And I might put half of this interview up and have the other half for Patreon, because it's time people should start supporting more independent media that go out of their way to bring this type of information that mainstream media isn't giving. But one of the arguments is that diversity is a code word for white genocide. Yeah. So you mentioned Richard Spencer and you mentioned them down there in Virginia. They'll say, yo, just like we say they have code words, they're saying, yo, there's code words against us. And one of their code words is that diversity equals white genocide. Is that what you're talking about with white like?
That's exactly what I'm speaking of. Because white, inside of, when you define white fragility, I have to do the family a favor and look up the definition. Can you look up the definition? Or on your phone, on anybody's phone, just look up white fragility. So the fact that white people cannot be confronted in any way, shape, or form about anything that they've done, not just to us, anything. There's a defense mechanism that automatically begins to go up. Okay? There's this fake crying that takes place, or this, you know, it's fragility, inferiority. What you see taking place, what is the conversation? They're saying that their mortality rate is the highest. White men.
Let me read this. Let me read this for you. It says right here, white people in North America live in a social environment that protects and insulates them from race-based stress. This insulated environment of racial protection builds white expectations for racial comfort while at the same time lowering the ability to tolerate racial stress, leading to what I refer to as white fragility. White fragility is a state in which even a minimum amount of racial stress becomes intolerable, triggering a range of defensive moves. These moves include the outward display of emotions such as anger, fear, guilt, and behaviors such as argumentation, silence, and leaving the stress-inducing situation. These behaviors in turn function to reinstate white racial equilibrium. Okay, yeah, I'm gonna end it there. Yeah.
So the reason why the diversity inside of places where the engineers or the coders are and the programmers, the individuals in Silicon Valley, that I'm not insinuating their sexuality, but if I were to take a guess, I would say that these men don't love women from the gate. The majority of them. No, I would say homosexual.
Okay.
In Silicon Valley, the quote unquote, some of these men that you find in the network and in the technology sector, right? White genocide is the argument that Richard Spencer and the people at Breitbart are having right now. They're saying xenophobia, where they're afraid of the migrants coming in because they're saying the migrants are browning Europe. And then the Europeans in America said that they want to make America great again because the niggas are browning America. Because hip hop being the most dominant genre of the ever, according to scientists, are now influencing their children to do what? Destroy the white race. The mortality rate of white males is the highest in the nation. It's not black men or people of color, it's white males. They're at the top of the mortality rate, and it's surging. And they're at a negative birth rate. So their fear that Francis Cress Welsing explained in the ISIS papers deals from a genetic place of inferiority. So any play that you see taking place is white inferiority. This whole thing is Silicon Valley. That's a display of that. They're creating empire, and they're saying only these men who, you know, when you look at the secret societies or the fraternal orders, these men tend to have extramarital affairs with each other, right? And they're controlling a power structure that is supporting the Western society psychology of Greco-Rome. Peace. That's what it's upholding. You feel what I'm saying? They're not upholding Africa. They're not doing it for China. They're not getting it in for Asia. They're going in for their ancestors who they identify with. That's what you're seeing with these Europeans. They're beginning to speak of their ancestors and create the argument in Charlottesville is about Robert E. Lee, a bronze statue that they need to stand to do what? Keep white fragility intact.
Right.
Because the minute those statues start coming down, that's when their fragility is now threatened, because they're like, niggas are gonna wanna bring it to us now. They're gonna wanna ask questions and say things. When they see those statues that stand, and those statues feed their psychology, that you could walk around America and not be afraid. Fear-based.
Right, and I think it's important to talk about and to change the language, right? Because when we say certain things, we are coding ourselves. We are informing our own identities. And sometimes these languages, these words that we say, these phrases are very academic. And we know the academy is run by mostly white men. So again, we have to be careful about how we word things. So I think it's important, that point that you brought back about not referring to it. I know we've historically referred to it as white male superiority, but it's that really what it is white male fragility. And I want to talk a little bit about how that white male fragility and the fear of becoming extinct, the fear of not being in a position of power,
dominance,
informs other cultures. There have been a lot of articles out about this phenomenon that's happening in Japan, and it's called herbivore men. Have you heard about it?
Yep.
Yeah. So recently we heard about the statistics of pay between race and gender,
yes,
and how across boards white males are paid the most. After that, it's Asian males.
Yes.
After that, it's Asian females. After that, it's white females. And then it's, I think, black females, and then it's black men.
Yes,
and
at the bottom.
Right, at the bottom.
Yes.
And then the list goes on with other quote-unquote races or ethnicities. But the phenomenon that's happening in Japan is that men have relinquished their gender roles.
Yes.
So they're pulling back from really interacting with women because women oftentimes are making more money than them, have more positions of power in the work area, are able to be more self-sufficient, and this is a culture shock for a lot of the men. They're trying to figure out where their identity fits if they're not kind of controlling the systems out there, controlling the space, controlling the social spaces. So men have self-reportedly basically stopped dating, stopped having sex with women. It's become a national crisis. The president's trying to figure out how he can get more men and women to marry there and start to have babies. And I think this idea of white male fragility, I think because it's become the social system institutional model, it's informing the way that a lot of men engage and interact with women. The fragility around just us being able to make sense and compromise and exchange with one another when it comes to partnership, when it comes to pulling it together, when it comes to kind of understanding that control and power doesn't always mean, or should never mean actually, that you are oppressing someone else. Your power and your control should never be substantiated by how much you can oppress another.
Fact.
So, you know, these ideas become problematic, and I see it in our own communities, and I'm trying to figure out, I'm trying to make sense of how we can begin to recodify so that we can push against these ideas that have never really been given, come authentically from us, authentically from our own communities. I don't think
it's been fed to us.
Yeah, I think historically, especially in America, the whole community has prided on the fact that quote unquote black women, indigenous women, women of African descent, we're powerhouses.
Yes.
We're powerhouses. We're dynamic.
Exactly.
And it informs how the whole community operates. The wealthiest, I think, historically, self-made woman, not coming from a lineage or wealth from hierarchy, but the richest self-made woman, I think, is Madam C.J. Walker. And she was a married woman, and her husband partnered with her in building that enterprise, building that business. She built schools from it. She was a philanthropist. She improved social movements for her community from it. So, you know, I think we really need to rethink this gender oppression and how really it doesn't work. It doesn't help in our systems for us to build up our communities. You want your women to be powerhouses. And I just want to say one other thing, because I think, you know, Rich, you made a statement that if you bring a woman in to your enterprise or your business, she can change that whole thing around. Didn't you make a statement?
The general consensus is that women are much better at multitasking.
Right.
So you get a woman to run your organization for you and everything will be in place.
Right. And the first organization that most women, and I'm not talking about girls, I'm talking about women, run are their households.
Facts.
Okay? We have a lot of full-time mothers, okay? A lot of full-time wives. And you don't become dynamic at that without having business skills, right? And you know, a lot of women after their children get older and they've been mothers, you know, for years and years and years, 13, 15, 19 years, and they want to go back in the workforce, they get depressed because they don't know what to put on their resume. Mm-hmm. But being a parent, being a mother, being a wife, running a household, you know, you have interpersonal skills there, you have money management skills there, you have organizational skills there, you have conflict resolution skills there, okay? You have promotion and demotion. It's a foundation.
It's all foundation, reward systems, values.
So we really need to rethink. We really need to rethink and recodify how we're engaging and how we're taking up other people's language, other people's concepts, really to our own demise and not in service to ourselves.
Yes, and I would also,
I
would also just add on to what she so brilliantly said, that, you know, when we speak about our history and how we were functioning in a way where we didn't have to come up with, you know, all of these highfalutin excuses to do wrong shit. Mm-hmm. When we were functioning in our proper persona, it's when we were working in cohesion. So everybody knows that when you bring women into whatever program or business or structure or network that you're trying to build, that's when it falls into place. We know that when you look at the majority of our successful endeavors, it involved our women heavily. In a more and maybe in a more diverse way, where it was more of them than it were men. Mm-mm. So I would take an example of another page that they're writing to show you that Rome is falling, and then it is a very sick culture to try to even catch up to, and say to myself, you know what, instead of me waiting for Google or some of these other people to diversify, and I'm a woman with skills, and I know that we live in this age of entrepreneurism where you could do your own thing and create your own futures, we need to now get with the people who do understand our importance and who we are, and they're not utilizing all of this fake white inferiority to divide us. Let's stop falling victim to the brain drain and start coming together. That's just one solution to, you know, what it is that's taking place. But I just feel like that's always going to be. Like we always have to keep always keep in mind about the law of genders. When does that stop taking place? Like, when does that stop going into place? So if there is a law of genders, it means that there's supposed to be differences in me and as well as in you.
That's right.
The same way that there's differences in hot weather, there's conditions in the hot weather, but there's also conditions in the cold weather, and you understand that they all coexist.
That's right.
So if we're talking about the law of duality, if we're talking about the law of genders, if we're understanding that yes, it's supposed to be that she could bear a child and I could plant a seed, because that's how the two work, it's the negative and the positive. And they're saying, and they're using that as a reason to say, oh nah, you know, we don't want to bring women in because this is what they do and that's what they do and stuff like that. And I'm like, you know, it doesn't even make sense. Mm-hmm. So if she doesn't drive the car, let's help her design the car.
Right.
There's roles, so there's a problem of roles being mixed up. Going back to what I was saying before, because now we live in this time where all of the lines, like you said earlier, the lines are blurred. These are not alpha males putting these policies together and shutting. These are men who are not, they're seeing themselves as both genders. They're like, we're not diversifying because we're doing the same thing that women are doing. Because they want to talk about women are trying to do the thing. Women want to play football. But what about what men are doing that women only do? Because everything that he named off about men being, name off the traits of a woman in business. If you still got that. When yeah, the traits are everything that I see men rapping about, talking about, doing and stuff like that, and it's not considered a feminine trait. You feel me? So it's just it's an interesting time we in.
Well, since we're in the age of entrepreneurism, is that the right word? Entrepreneurs?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, you're right. Okay.
Entrepreneurship.
If you're head of a corporation,
Yes.
company, and you're hiring people,
Yes.
Red Pill Inc.,
Yes, sir.
Ayanna Inc.,
Hey.
Red Pill decides for what he's doing, his clothing manufacturing, for whatever reason, he decides he wants to hire 20 black males. He doesn't have one female on his staff.
Not one?
Not one. Not one.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
And the reason why, he has his reasons. You know, he's able to get with them at certain times of the night, certain designs that he wants, certain cuts. I don't know if it's whatever reason he has. It's his reason. And he feels as though these are the most talented people. Should he be criticized because women want diversity? Or should we say, well, this brother, he thinks these people are the most talented for his company? So it seems like sometimes with a company, the head of a company is saying, these are who I think is the most talented, but the world is saying, no, 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 we don't want who's your most talented.
Yeah.
We want to see different genders, we want to see different colors. So who's right or who's wrong, or is there such thing as right and wrong in a situation like that Red Pill finds himself in?
You know, people's selection in life has less to do about who they're selecting and more to do about how they're relating to themselves, how they're relating to their own self-education and what they value. And really how broad they've cast their net in their knowing, in their understanding, in their global view. Some people don't have a global view because they don't expand their net. You know, I think that's a huge piece of that. Now, I wouldn't define him as a sexist, okay? I wouldn't define that person as a misogynist, but I would want to interrogate his selection. What does he, what are the things that he looks for in his selection process? You know, does he deliberately recruit a varying display? You know, it's like all of those things are about diet. Diet is not just food. Diet is about whatever you're taking into your space. And some people are very monolithic in their selections. So I'd want to interrogate that.
Well, a situation that Brother Rich just mentioned, you know, when I heard it, I just was like, that sounds like somebody having all of their mans in them, their boys. Like how LeBron hired his childhood friends who happened to be a bunch of guys. And he said, the reason why I wanted them on the team is because we all spoke about these dreams back then. You feel me? Like, it's all in our head. You know what I'm saying? And these are my day ones, and this is who I'm rolling with. So if there was a situation where I got into a business endeavor with all of my day ones, I would understand. But I would think about diversifying, you know, certain positions and things of that nature in the interim as my business grows. Like, case in point, with LeBron and his 4 brothers, right? They now went into business. That business has expanded. As a result of that expansion, he can now diversify his labor force or begin to hire more diverse people, and then it will all weigh out. So, you know, that would be the only time that I would really understand something such as that. But I'm about diversity, so I would agree that, you know, and I would also say that there's a problem in that whole scenario because black women are now encouraged to do what? Black girls code, black girls only, like black women, like they're encouraging young black women or black women to get into business with all black women.
Okay.
Girls trip. You know what I mean?
That's leading to my next question I'm about to ask. When, you know, we talked about white fragility earlier, and when they hear the term, you know, when they hear the term Black Lives Matter, they get alarmed, they get upset, they go crazy. What about us? And we're like, wait. We're the ones getting shot down like dogs in the streets by the police, and they just totally don't understand that. They're like, no, all lives matter. We're like, yeah, of course they do. But what we're talking about now is our lives. When you hear the term black girl magic, you don't see that same fragility from black men. We like, okay, black girl magic. I don't see the outcry from black men like, well, what about black male magic? So why is it more acceptable in the mainstream for white people to be so fragile? But if we was to say, you know how ridiculous it would be for a brother to get upset at black women for having the hashtag black girl magic?
Yeah.
The same black woman that claimed they understand white people for saying all lives matter, they wouldn't understand us for saying, well, black men magic too. They would be like, yo, brothers, you got yours, let's have ours.
Yeah.
So why is it you know, kind of
You believe that?
Do I believe what?
That women would not be supportive of black men shine, reclaiming their shine, the way that we're reclaiming our shine.
not
reclaiming our shine.
What I'm saying is that it would sound ridiculous for us to come at y'all for saying black girl magic.
Okay.
That would sound ridiculous. They would say, yo, why are you coming at us? But you know what we've been through in this country as black women?
Right.
So it would just sound ridiculous, but it doesn't sound ridiculous to the same people when they hear all lives matter. They understand it more when white people say it.
Right.
They're more understanding I heard Chili Talk from TLC. Yeah. And you know, all the Floyd Mayweather, all the all lives matter advocates. But talk to me about that. Guy. Yeah. Go ahead. Talk to me about that.
You know, what can I say? You know what I'm saying? When we do what we do, we always have to keep in context who we are. You always have to keep in context who we are, who's paying attention to what it is that, you know, that we do as a people. We don't get upset at our women for doing what they're supposed to be doing. You understand? It's supposed to be Black Girl Magic. Yeah. We're on the 44th anniversary of hip hop. Why not Black Girl Magic? After everything that y'all been through in these 44 years in hip hop. So, you know, one of the things that we practice and we're not ashamed of is venerating each other when we're in our proper mind. It's holding each other up. It's bigging each other up because there's a connection. There's a duality at work. There's a magnetic pull that the black man and the black woman have with each other and on each other, that when they work that thing out properly, things take place.
Right.
When we look at the European and we identify Western psychology and mentality, it's always dealing with the separation of the two. You understand? It's not always dealing with the power of bringing that thing together. They're always dealing with fractal. They're always dealing with dismemberment. They're always dealing with disunity. They're always telling you what's better than the other, pros and cons, separating. So that whole thing that they follow, divide and conquer. You know what I mean? So when you look at them in a lot of situations, you'll begin to see that there's a white fragility problem, a male white fragility problem. Ironically enough, but they're them as well. But I'm saying that Western male psychology and Western female psychology, they both have these, neuroses or psychosis to them and whatnot. But go and watch the movie American Psycho to get a better understanding of the mentality of this Greco-Roman that you may be dealing with, or this Germanic, what they call them.
Was Ed Norton in that?
Ed Norton is in American History X. That's another
American
one
to
check out. Christian Bale, that's when he cut his teeth in American Psycho and whatnot. Ironically enough, there's a movement called the Red Pill movement of a bunch of Europeans that built up a whole following on Reddit, where they say that they're the victims of women basically rising up. You know what I'm saying? They're saying that they're victims of the power that white women, they're specifically talking about their mothers, their sisters, and the women that they allowed to vote, and they're utilized, and they're in their white fragility state of mind, and they're like, yo, we're oppressed. We're losing power. What is Richard Spencer and them saying right now? These people that we're giving energy, they're saying, yo, we're losing power. We're losing prestige. We're losing our hold and our grip on American culture. Make it great again. That's what you're hearing on multiple levels and multiple channels. Is being inserted into media mainstream, is being inserted into the educational system, is being inserted into the social engineering and the programming that they're basically putting our people under. You know what I'm saying? Because the genders are, you know, the genders are not what they used to be.
I didn't know Asian women were paid more than white women when Ayanna
yes.
said that. I didn't know that. That's wow. That's quite interesting.
Yeah, they get the bag.
Right. Well, that's all. You know, great conversation as always. I definitely appreciate your time. Why don't y'all leave the your contact info so the people could get at y'all too? Looking like y'all coming from the Black Power Awards and shit.
Yeah, right? Every day. You all can connect with me on Instagram. My handle is Lucille Clifton, LucilleClifton.
Facts. And you could catch us on iTunes or the Google Store, the KTL app. Pick that up, download that. That's free.
Yep.
All right. And Kings County, that big cartel. We got pieces for y'all. All right.
And on that note, we sign out, family. Brother Rich.